Nothing you buy lasts more than 2 years from now, so it doesn't apply to what you already own. Or you have to live for 2 years without playing a board game, but then afterwards you can jump back in.
It's a banger.
I'm trying to think like what I would buy from now moving forward that I don't mind not lasting 2 years. Like I have a house, I have a fairly new car. Like I should be good. I should be good.
Once you buy a new car, you've got it for 2 years. Once you buy a new phone, you've got it for 2 years. Every item of clothing you buy from now on will only last 2 years.
And most clothes don't last more than 2 years anyway. So that's not. I mean, my undies, they're not lasting 2 years. So I don't know if like what. That's tough.
Books.
It probably is something. There's probably something I buy. I go, oh no. Can I gift it to my wife?
Board games as well. New board games you buy as well.
New board games.
Yeah.
Yeah, but no board games for 2 years. That seems undoable in our industry.
Yeah.
It's like I better find a new job.
Okay, just imagine that Garphill kind of keeps going. Like your business somehow keeps going magically. Obviously, you're not designing games, but like everything head in flight is working. You know, you've got 2 years prepared and ready to go. So that doesn't bring the business and survival part of that into the equation.
Nah, I like playing board games. I'm not giving up board games.
2 years versus the rest of your life, though. That's an interesting dilemma, isn't it?
What if my wife buys the stuff?
Yeah. You sell it and then you buy it back, and you sell it and you buy it back. It's just all secondhand stuff the whole time.
Because I'm like, in the near future, I'm gonna have to buy a car. If that lasted for 2 years, that would be terrible, you know?
Yeah.
Like, or you buy like a really terrible car that probably will only last for 2 years, but then you're putting this like safety considerations and stuff like that.
Or what happens if you move to a new house, something happens and you like lose all your cutlery. And now for the rest of your life, every 2 years, we need to get some more forks, guys. We need more knives and spoons.
See, I wouldn't mind that. You start in 2 years. Bit of change. There's surely something I'm not thinking of the way that's like, oh no, of course.
To me, it's just like the cumulative effect of the collective hassle of all these things that constantly need updating and probably out of sync with each other as well. So you write like the shopping list and there's always some sort of like household items every single time.
Like a lawnmower. Who wants to buy a new lawnmower for 2 years?
Oh, if you buy it secondhand,
Cleaner.
it's probably okay.
I just concrete my lawn. Do I have to sell the concrete in 2 years? Is that what's going on?
No. True.
I think this question's difficult because it depends a lot on the situation that you're in right now.
Right.
Like me and my wife owned an apartment in Italy. Now we're renting. We are planning on buying something in the future again. So it's like a house is not something that you can buy and then it only lasts for 2 years, you know? Like it just doesn't work. So I feel like I'm forced to give up board games for 2 years based on the life situation I'm in. Like maybe if I had the house, I had the new car, it might be more tempting not to. But then eventually it's going to catch up to you, right? Like Shem's like, I'm in a good position now. But eventually, like 10 years, 15 years, 20 years down the line, it's going to start to be a problem, you know? Like when he has to buy a new car and, you know, when all the stuff that he already owned wears out after 10 or 15 years or whatever, and then he's just in a cycle of buying things all the time. So yeah.
Board games. Gotta have board games.
What's the longest you could go without playing games? Like, is there a version of the question where you would be like, okay, I'm gonna buy the stuff and ditch board games for a while?
Right, a couple of weeks, so
Can we play board games online?
every day, right? Every day playing games.
Yeah.
I like the angle of picking board games and kind of treasuring and caring for the things that I already have now. You know what I mean? Like the whole like slightly minimalist thing where the stuff I have now, look after them, take care of them, enjoy them. And I think if everything you bought from now on, you'd have to replace in 2 years' time, you probably wouldn't be much of a hoarder or a collector of different things.
Oh, collectibles. Oh,
Yeah, collectibles. There we go. Has it just broken, Shem? Lego? You've got a lot of Lego now, though. You could cherish all the Lego that you've already got now.
that is sad. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just have to start cycling to work, walking to work. Yeah. I don't know.
I think I could possibly backdoor the board game thing if I was allowed to play cards.
Nah. No.
Like I could possibly be fine. But if cards aren't allowed, then cards and board games aren't allowed, then nah, I'm going board games. I'm going to play and I'm going to have to buy things occasionally. And it's going to be really, really annoying, but it's an interesting question for sure. Because they're not even on the same axis, these things, right? It's just...
Yeah. I just think like I have to be serious and be like fasting board games for 2 years because of the situation that I'm in. Then I'm going to have to buy a car, I'm going to have to buy a house. And those are not things that I can replace after 2 years. So I just have to be the sad, serious one who's, you know.
Are you handing in your resignation? Is that what's going on?
Digital games.
Look, I can still market,
Powerful
I can
digital.
still market board games without playing them. I'll just read the rule book, know what they're about.
That's like an alcoholic still going to a bar. That's just not good.
Just going to hang out, guys.
Yeah.
I think people will find a lot of solace from the fact that we really like games. You know, we're not doing this for other reasons. We really just like games. So that's cool.
Welcome to the Lens and Veil podcast. Join Shem, Sam, and Zach as they dive into a designer-focused analysis of Raiders of Scythia Omens expansion and Skara Brae Headlands expansion, both by Shem Phillips.
So today we have a double header. We have two new Ancient Anthology expansions coming out, and we're going to get a chance to talk with Shem about the design and the kind of inspiration behind these expansions. But I want to start first. Oh, should I say what they are? I'll say what they are. We've got an expansion for Raiders of Scythia called Omens, and there's an expansion for Skara Brae called Headlands. But I want to start by asking you, Shem, you previously have said that you weren't keen to do any ancient expansions. Why was that? And then, obviously, what changed your mind?
Well, a lot of it is to do with how, with the trilogies, there's sort of an expectation that there should be expansions because we've done them in the past. And back in the day of Raiders and Explorers, expansions were like a very big thing. Like Carcassonne was getting its 70th expansion and Catan had tons of expansions. So it was kind of like a very big thing in the scene at the time. I'd say it's probably less so now, but there's still obviously a thing. But yeah, we had an expectation for our trilogies, so we kind of go into those games knowing they're going to get one or two expansions each. And I thought it'd be quite refreshing not to do them for the Ancient Anthology. There wasn't like a decision up front, it was just the fact that with Raiders of Scythia, there already was kind of a redo of the North Sea Raiders. So there was no point to expand it in my mind because I was already doing a new version of a base game, presenting a new game. Why would I hold back parts of that design I had? So that was that one. With Hadrian's Wall was a second game. That was Bobby's thing. So he kind of designed it as he wanted to. And it's quite hard to expand that style of game. And then Legacy of You, the third game in the series, was a solo-only campaign game. And I have thought of like, how would you expand that? And really the main way would be to create a new campaign for it, which is a lot of work and also quite challenging to make it quite fresh. Because with Legacy of You, it's like it's a puzzle type of game. And not that it's fully solvable, but you can get into rhythms of like knowing how to play well. And once you have kind of achieved that, it's hard to, you know, unlearn that kind of skill set, I guess. So you'd have to throw a very strange twist on the puzzle to make an expansion work. And then, you know, Ezra Nehemiah was fourth. That game is filled to the brim. Like there's no expansion for that. That doesn't make a bigger box. So I really want to keep these Ancient Anthology games in the smaller boxes quite intentionally. And so there wasn't really a demand for expansions. There also wasn't room physically for expansions. And it was quite nice just offering games like, here is the finished game. Don't expect expansions. And people could just buy it for the $60 price US dollars and know they've got the full game. There might be some promos they can pick up here and there, but mostly it's like a finished game. Don't expect expansions. No kind of like, oh, in 2 years' time, I have to spend another $100 on making it bigger and better and stuff. So, yeah.
Right. So can you explain to us, starting with Omens, exactly what is being expanded in the game?
Exactly. So Omens came about after Headlands. So I'll get to touch on that one in a sec. But after I had kind of started working on Headlands for Skara Brae, I was like, well, maybe there's something else I could do. Like maybe there is time to expand some things. And the main thing with Scythia was that the box doesn't match the other boxes in the series. So if you line up your Ancient Anthology games on the shelf, you notice that Scythia, the spine of the game, the side of the box, doesn't match the other ones. And so there's always been a few people here and there asking, like, can we get a sleeve for it? Can we get a replacement box? And I know why, like it'd be cool to replace it. But the idea of doing just a box was like, well, there's probably not much demand for it. Like you're talking probably a few hundred people at most, probably not even 100 people maybe, that would actually buy it, that would want to spend money on a new box. So, but with this in mind, and also there's things on the main board that needed tweaking here and there, and did change between versions. There was never really a final proper version of the board. It's always had a few little tweaks here and there. And so I went into it going, well, let's try and make an expansion that is a replacement box for the base game. That's the same size, does come with a replacement board, and then adds in more stuff. The challenge, though, was that the base game already is kind of full. There's more room than, say, Ezra Nehemiah or Paladins, but the box is fairly full. So I couldn't add tons of content because it would just get too big. So the kind of design angle I came from was more about replacing stuff than adding stuff. There is new stuff, but a lot of it's replacing. So the entire deck of horse cards, animal cards, has been replaced by a new updated version of animal cards. So you can just swap those out. They exist in the same kind of space, like the same volume inside the box. There's a few more crew cards. There's 2 new leaders, but that's just a few cards. So that's not going to fill the box that much. There's 2 purple dice, so they get used in some of the omens. So that's, again, not much space in the box. There's some Kurgan cards, which are part of omens as well. And there's some shield tokens. These, like, similar kind of volume to, say, the provisions in the game, so they're not taking up that much space. But the main thing mechanically that's been added are the omen cards. So there are 12 omen cards. They are larger tarot-sized cards. Each game you're going to shuffle them up and place 4 alongside the left of the main board. So each one lines up with one of the 4 civilizations, the Sumerians, Assyrians, Persians, and Greeks. And those omen cards are going to change the rules for that particular civilization. So it's going to have maybe some setup rules at the very top. It's going to have, when you raid here, this thing now applies, this new effect or this extra thing's going to happen. And then also when you complete a quest here, this thing's going to happen. And there might also be some extra scoring conditions at the bottom as well. So for example, there's some that might add more resources, more plunder to certain spots, but they might come at a cost. Other ones might allow you to cycle out your hero. Some will give you more wounds when you go there. Some will allow you to pick up extra quests and that kind of thing. And then I think 4 of them offer a little extra victory condition at the end. So it might be about having the most wounds on your cards, having the most cards beneath your Kurgan, those warriors that have died during battle, that kind of thing. So they kind of spice up the game. And it's not just about like which 4 are in play, it's the order of them. So having one that's like very wound focused in Greece, that's going to be like, oh, that's a big end game, kill your entire crew type one. Whereas if that card shows up in Cimmeria, then, well, if you go there quickly, you're going to lose all your crew and then you kind of hampered yourself a bit. So they kind of change up the feel of the game quite a bit.
Yeah, so I love this omen system. It's kind of really elegant. Like these cards were just the exact right size to like slot in next to these boards. It kind of feels like it's fully planned, even though I know from talking to you it wasn't. And I love how this variation kind of changes up each play of the game. And it creates lots of different synergies. There's synergies between regions and the omens that are tied to them. Because, you know, some regions are easier to invade and some are more like a late game thing. So there's some really interesting dynamics going on there, depending on how high up the board these omens show up. There can be like sort of synergies between the omens themselves if you get different combinations. When you design this sort of thing, are you giving thought to combinations? Or do you just design each one in a vacuum, hoping they're cool, and then see if there's combinations out of that?
So I wasn't really thinking about like the combinations between the omens so much. It was more about, I'm going to have, say, 12, because I felt like that was a good number to have for variety. And what can these 12 things touch on to make them feel different? That was the biggest challenge, really, because obvious things are like, well, one to do with heroes, one can be to do with animals, one can have wounds, one can be about gold, that kind of thing. And you quickly run out of ideas. Like, so I start thinking about what else can I add? What else can I do? So the idea of bringing the purple dice was kind of a fun extra thing. And for a long time, there was just one omen card that interacted with purple dice. You essentially roll them in place of red dice, and they are much more like high risk, high reward kind of dice, feast and famine. But then later on, I thought, well, I should be using these dice more. So there's actually 2 that kind of use the dice in different ways. The other thing that came in was shields. So these are these new tokens that you can get that you can place them onto your crew, and they essentially negate a wound. So rather than placing a wound, you can remove a shield. That also came in, I think that actually came in quite early for the animals. I wanted some more animals in the game. Originally, I think I was trying to think of 2 eagles and 2 horses. Ended up landing on just 2 horses and 1 eagle. But the obvious thing for that was like, well, they could have shields on them. So there's one of each that have the shield. So if you have a horse that has a shield, you're essentially always taking 1 fewer wound every time you raid. But I wanted to lean into that more, so creating actual tokens that you could get was an obvious kind of move. And then there's, I think, 1 or 2 omen cards that lean into shields more. So that kind of thing where you try to create variety so they don't just feel samey. And I think I had about 8 to 10 that were feeling good. And then the last 2 to 4 were like kind of challenging. Like, how do I make new feelings for these things? And yeah, we got there in the end, but there are, in a good way, some similarities where they do synergize. There's one that lets you kind of do more quests and have access to getting more quests. There's another one that's all about doing quests with livestock on them. And there's got an actual thing about trading below that one. So they can synergize quite nicely because you could be trying to score having quests that have livestock, but also pick up those quests that have livestock on them from the other one. So there's a lot of stuff. There's things like how shields interact with wounds. So if you get shields early in Cimmeria and Assyria, picking up lots of shields and then going to Greece where there's going to be tons of wounds, then you can help negate those wounds. So yeah, there's some good interactions, but they weren't really planned. And so I definitely haven't seen every combination, right? Like it's more about, does this particular omen feel fun and unique? And do you notice it when it's in the game?
It's kind of the magic of game design is like after doing this ideation and then you just play the game and it's like, oh, I never saw that this thing with this thing actually ends up being a really synergistic and fun combo. Like I hope there's lots of things out there in our games that we didn't even think of that work well together that make the player feel really powerful and have lots of fun.
Yeah, it's like discovering your own child. Kind of, I didn't know they could do that. That's well done. Yeah.
So obviously you mentioned Raiders of Scythia was based on, the core mechanisms of Raiders of the North Sea with some of the expansion content kind of included in a way or redeveloped. But we had comments on Facebook as well when we announced the expansion, people asking, is this just bringing the other expansion content from Raiders of the North Sea that wasn't included? So did you ever think about just doing that, or did that never cross your mind? You just wanted to do something new? Why don't you just use the stuff that you already had?
Well, I kind of did that already. That's the thing. So Holy Heroes brought in the quests. We already had offerings in Raiders of the North Sea. And then with Scythia, I kind of merged the quests and the offerings together. They became one thing. I brought in Cumus, which was basically mead from Holy Heroes as well. And then there were some, I think there were more promos. I don't think they were in the expansions, but there were cards that you could have in your crew and then go to the town centre, and rather than playing a card, you could trigger that card's effect. And so that became a very big thing in Scythia. That's kind of what the leaders do. And then you can get crew that you hire, you can then tuck particular eagles above them, which let you use those effects as well. So you can kind of build up combos of town centre actions. So that was already done. Fields of Fame brought in more of this kind of like feeling to the raids. So it was more about you could lose it all, you could like have a big battle and feel more like powerful or whatever. And that was mostly through the Jarls that we had. And that's very like, that's so Viking. So it kind of fits so well. But I took the wound system that created and used that in Scythia as well. So the biggest change for Scythia was how there's no Valkyrie. And I mean, I don't know if I talked about this before. I think we've covered Scythia before in the podcast, but the biggest challenge for Scythia originally was like, how do I remove the Valkyrie and still make this a really solid game to the point that people don't miss the Valkyrie? Like you kind of forget it's even a thing. And that was the biggest challenge. And hopefully I got there. Of course, if you know about them, you know about them, but because the Valkyrie was so cool in the original North Sea, and the feeling of like, I'm just going to burn it all, let them burn and still score points for it. So there's nothing left, well, I think, from those expansions that I could take, other than like really just basically reskinning stuff like, there's Jarls now. And now there's these random people from Scythia that we have to interact with. So I wanted to take it somewhere different. I wanted to bring in fresh stuff that wasn't in the North Sea and guarantee there's going to be people asking for like a North Sea version of this, I guess.
I love the idea that these games were like kind of brothers, right? And they look really similar and they're based on the same systems, but as they grow up, they become more different from each other. They've got their own identity, and it means that players have a reason for owning and playing both. Like when you've got Raiders of Scythia with Omens in, it's going to be such a different experience to Raiders of North Sea with Fame and Heroes, like very different experience. So I think that that's super cool that you've decided, actually, no, I'm not making the same game and just doing stuff that I know works and people liked and was pretty successful. Those expansions were successful. No, let's make this game like more different, more unique, and just go on the path it wants to go. Because we often talk about how games kind of like, it's sort of romantic style language as game designers that, the game does what it wants to do. It becomes the kind of thing that it wants to be, right? It's almost got this like soul of its own, like this own personality. And I think you've sort of leaned into that with Omens.
Yeah, I think Scythia was far more combo focused, I'd say, or like engine building focus. There's not too much difference between the two games in that respect. Like you do get a crew, you do start to feel there's certain strength in a certain area. That's in both games, but I kind of leaned into it more in Scythia. and there's more variety of cards for one. In North Sea, I think there's like 4 barbarians or whatever it is, and 4 of this and 4 of that and 3 of this. And Scythia's only 2 of each card. So there's a lot more variety and only 2 of each. So if you want to build an engine about attacking Assyria, there's like 3 or 4 cards that could do that. 8 total, I guess. 6 to 8 total. If you've got those cards in hand, then you're going to try and build that combo. And then you're always thinking about like, what happens when Assyria's finished being raided? How do I pivot out? So, and then your hero, your leader, having their special power gives a lot more like direction as a player and I guess motivations in certain areas of the game, how to build your crew. Whereas that's not really in the original either. So like the Omen system is kind of just building on that more. There's combinations, there's different powers, there's card play, there's stuff going on. So it kind of takes it in a different direction.
I think one thing I really like about this expansion, having playtested it a couple of times, is that although it adds like a little bit more upfront learning because you have to understand what each of the omens is doing in each of the areas, I think it actually gives you more player direction. At the beginning of the game, you're like, I really like that omen with the crew that I've got. I really want to focus on that area. So I need to build up and try and raid it 2 or 3 times, or I want to be completing the quests in that area. And so I think it almost is going to help new players to the game. Like, I would probably include this if I was ever teaching it to someone, because I feel like giving players more direction is actually really helpful for new players. But I think it's also going to be fun for experienced players because of those combinations and being like, oh, how can I try and make some synergies between the places I'm raiding, the places I'm trying to do quests, and just all the new content as well. They're going to love it. So I think you kind of hit both, making it in a way better for newer players and better for experienced players. So I'm impressed.
What were your early thoughts or feelings when playtesting this expansion? Like, obviously you had this idea to do some omens, and then, okay, there's the moment when you do it, you play it, and you're like, oh, this is working, or maybe it wasn't working. Did anything surprise you? What were your initial thoughts when you actually got to give this a whirl?
Yeah, I'm trying to actually remember the process of it. I have a feeling that the first few versions probably didn't have the pairings for each card, where there was like a raid effect and a quest effect. I don't think that was a thing straight away. They kind of landed on that soon after.
Right.
So I think the first plays would have been a case of like, oh, this system does kind of work. Like having a rule that only applies to these raid spots does work. And then it was just a matter of building on that concept and like seeing them, testing them, seeing how each one felt. And then sort of bringing in the scoring systems was more of a late thing. So I quite early on landed on the Kurgan idea. It's essentially doing like a Valkyrie type system, but with, in the right setting, the right theme for the Scythians. So the Kurgan is about, when your warriors die in that particular area, they go beneath your Kurgan card and they could score you points. So that was already a scoring card quite early on. But then I was like, well, actually, I should have more cards that offer scoring. So what else can we score? Well, there's like shields on your crew, wounds on your crew. And I think the other one was about having quests that feature livestock. So having those extra layers was fun to tweak with. But the first version, I think I only had maybe 6 or 8 ideas. And they were just like bare bones kind of ideas, just to make sure it worked. And I was doing most of this testing solo. So I'd just be downstairs in the office, like just playing a game. I think it was like the first week I was just playing like 2 or 3 games a day and just thrashing it and just seeing how it felt and getting back into the rhythm of playing this game because I hadn't played it in quite a long time, which was also a challenge because, Raiders of North Sea is 8 or so years old. And obviously I thrashed that a lot and then thrashed it when I designed the solo, thrashed it when I designed the expansions, and just keep playing it. And I played that game so many times. Then I came back, 4 years ago, whatever it is, 5 years ago for Scythia, and I'd do it all over again. Same playground, same kind of toolbox and things I'm working with. So I've played this game a lot. And I would say a big challenge as the designer was to still enjoy playing it a lot. Like, because I had to play test all these omens.
Right.
Am I actually having fun at the table? Or was it just going to be like, this feels like work? But it actually was really fun. And I was enjoying it and I was wanting to come back and play it more, which is a good sign for me, I guess, that what I'm creating, what I'm adding is making the game feel fresh.
Can you unpack that fun? Like, what were you feeling when you were playing it?
As someone who knows the game inside and out, it's about surprises, I think. Like having different experiences at the table that I wasn't expecting. Like, oh, that's a cool combination. Like that we were saying earlier about like the game surprising you with what it can do. So that was the enjoyable part, I think. And also just seeing that this was adding a wrinkle to the game without ruining the game, and actually improving the game in my mind. So that was the fun of, it was really like the surprises to my own play, like me as a player, those surprises, but also just being surprised, like, oh, this actually works. This is a cool concept. It's working how I had hoped it would work.
By the way, did you say Raiders is 8 years old?
Is it?
It's like 10.
11? Try 11. Try 11.
Is it?
From when it was published. Yeah.
I don't know.
Boys all growing up, mate.
The years, yes. Keep on going.
You were a prodigy, bro.
I was going to say 10, and I was like, nah, it's not that old. But it's that old. Yeah, I think Scythia was it came out 5 years after the North Sea. That was kind of one of the ideas. Like, take 5 years of design knowledge and put it into a new version of the game.
Yeah, so this expansion is 6 years after Scythia came out, which I think is quite cool for the fans of Scythia that we're supporting a game that came out 6 years ago, because, like, you know, people probably thought that there would never be any new content for the first Ancient Anthology game. So I think a lot of people are excited about that because it's still a very well-loved game.
Yeah, a big part of that is also like doing expansions is not just about demand, it's about the cost of making the expansion. And we've got this on our minds with, say, Chaos Order, for example. Like, we'd love to do expansions. One hand, there's a demand, like there's probably just enough demand, just enough to make them. But then there's all the art cost and the design cost. So with these ones, with Omens and with Headlands, I knew from the very start that the art was quite minimal, because you're not talking about like tons of work. It's probably like a month and a half, 2 months worth of work for Sam to illustrate. Probably on the 2 months kind of side. So it's not a lot. A board game in this world, the Ancient Anthology, is usually about 4 to 6 months, entire game. So it's not a lot of work. And being that these were my games, like solo designs, Scythia and Skara Brae, I knew that I could thrash the development side very quickly. I could get through a lot of reps of playing it myself. So it wasn't going to occupy a lot of our time as a group, you know, because we have lots of stuff that we test together and lots of stuff we could be playing every day. And I didn't want these games to be taking up that space so much. So a lot of the original testing was solo. And then obviously I bring you guys in to get your feedback and change things, and then open it up to more players and get their feedback as well.
So just a real quick question for me, because I'm curious. Can you play this game without the omens? Can you buy the expansion and just do like all the new heroes, all the horses and eagles and stuff, and just, or like only have a few omens, not one in every arena?
Yeah, you can.
Is that possible?
Totally. Yeah. So there's those cards that you noticed when we played Sam last time. There's some cards that say place this beneath your Kurgan or do this. And that's basically kind of, let's say, future proofing, but more like proofing the game so that this card still functions without that particular omen card. And none of the omen cards are needed for the extra content. You can just use the new horses and eagles. You can use the shields. The main board adds a few spots. So the barracks action that was like spend a Cumus to remove 2 wounds now also gives you a shield. And the meeting tent, I think it is, there was always a secondary option there to get 1 card and 2 Kumas, but now it can be 1 card and I think it's any combination of 2 Kumas and 2 shields. So
nice.
Shields are now in there as well, just by default. And the purple dice, you could just like house rule, like you could just say, all right, we're using purple dice instead of red. Or you can always choose to use purple dice instead of red. So yeah, you could totally play without the omens.
Nice.
So in our last podcast, we spoke about Shackleton Base, which has these different modules. And we were talking about how the fact with, you know, all these different modules that it could end up that people don't like some of them and like some of them and end up deciding on what their preferred 3 to play with are. So essentially with these omens, it could end up like this, that people go, I like playing with this omen in Greece and this one in Assyria. And then they just have their kind of preferred setup, right?
You totally could. I mean, you could even stack stuff. Like, there's no reason you can't put 2 omens in one region. I haven't tested it, but like the rules that they add, they're not like fundamentally changing the core rules. They're little additions. So things like when you raid, also do this. So you could have multiple of those in one thing. So if you want crazy mode, just chuck 3 omens in each area and go nuts.
We got to try it, guys.
Right.
So I hadn't planned to ask this question, but I'm so intrigued actually, because part of the incentive for making this expansion is to replace the box, right? And so what you could have done was you could have just had the same box cover and then just had like a little Omens expansion included, right? But you've got a completely brand new cover with amazing art. It kind of reminds me of when Gandalf and Éomer arrived to Helm's Deep and you look up to the hills and you see these riders on the top of the hill. It's incredible. Was this your idea for Sam to do another box cover, or did Sam want to have a crack at it? Was he like, no, I think I can do one better? And also, do you intend for people just to throw away the old box? Tell us about the box.
Yeah, so the original design, it wraps around the whole edge of the box and it has a character on each side of the box that's formed from part of the front cover. So that kind of wraps around. So there's like a guy, you know, firing a bow and arrow on one side and you'll see his arms sticking out the side of the box on the other side. So you can't just reuse that and just plonk characters on the side to make it feel like the other ones. But also, like, Sam has upskilled like crazy over the last, you know, how many years of doing these games. And I remember, I think it was like 3 or 4 years ago, I did a little mock-up image at home. I was just going to show off like the Ancient Anthology as a thing. I think it was at the point that we had maybe up to Ezra Nehemiah, maybe a bit longer actually. It was a bit further over, like maybe 5 or 6 games in. And I put a character from each in this little lineup. And it was quite obvious that the Scythia didn't feel quite like the other ones. He's stepped up so much since then. They're still great, they hold up now, but like when you compare them to his newer stuff, it's like you can see the change. And so I definitely want a new cover. I was like, nah, Sam's going to do a knockout cover of this one. He's going to do something amazing and really elevate the box cover to the other ones. So that was always going to be a thing. And it just made a lot of sense. I think the concept was completely his. I kind of said, I want it to feel like a base game box. I don't want it to say like huge omens. Like, it had to be quite subtle. And I really wanted to get that feeling of like they're about to fight or they've just fought, that moody kind of feeling. And he captured it perfectly. Had to have this kind of hint of omens in there without making that the key thing of the game. So yeah, the addition of the moon, I was actually like, after he had almost finished the box, he had this empty space in the sky. I was like, maybe just put like a moon in there or something. Just that's a very omen kind of thing. And what to do with the old box? I mean, you can design your own game and use it as a prototype box. There you go.
There we go.
When I got the Architects big box, I used my old, little Architects box as a medicine box. So there we go. Yeah, many uses.
A medicine box. There you go.
Awesome. I'm looking forward to Omens coming out. So as a little bit of a segue, guys, we're talking about expansions. I'm interested for each of you, what makes a good expansion for you, just as a gamer, as a player? So there's kind of categories that expansions can hit on, and some of them hit on several of these. There's the sort of more stuff expansions, where you get more of the same, just more cards, more things like, in Architects, it's like more buildings, more apprentices, concepts that have already been introduced in the base game, but just more of that content. Then there's the new stuff idea, introducing new mechanisms, new concepts, new wrinkles, puzzles, stuff like that. Then there's the sort of balance patch approach where, we're going to fix some of the stuff from the base game that wasn't quite working or get some of the numbers right, replace this deck of cards with this one, that sort of thing. And then there's also the modules like we've talked about. Which of these is kind of most exciting for you guys? Is it case by case? What do you think makes a good expansion?
It's 100% case by case. Like, I would almost instinctively say, I don't like the more stuff ones as much. But then I'm like, I think about games that I've played a lot. For example, we're going to be talking about Skara Brae soon. I spammed Skara Brae so much. Like, I had played it before, but I spammed it so much when it came out on BGA. And I was just like, I want more special action tiles. I want more stuff. Or recently I've been playing a lot of Wayfarers on BGA as well. Just, having it on BGA just gives me the opportunity to get in heaps of reps. And I'm just like, I want more cards. I want more combos to come out. And so I think it depends like how much you've played a game. If you are a big fan of a game and you've played it a lot, and it's one of those games that has a lot of combinations between different cards and stuff like that, you're going to want more because like you've seen everything, because you played it so many times, and you probably still enjoy that. You want to be surprised again. You want to discover new things in that same playground because you love that playground, right? So I think the more stuff is always going to be for like big fans. Absolutely. Big fans of a game.
Yeah.
And that means that like a lot of people only play games once every 6 months or whatever. The more stuff is not really going to change their life, right? So for them, it could be the new stuff, because then it's like you get that discovery straight away, because the more stuff is like the discovery is like by playing the game lots. I feel like the new stuff is like you play the game another time, another 2 times, and you get that discovery. And I think the balance patch is also for people who play it a lot, and also sometimes for the designers, when it's like you've released the game and you were happy when you released it, but then just so many more games get played and you realize that, we could have tweaked that part of the game a little bit more. And like I think Architects is a great example where you guys kind of did a lot of these things, where the game was amazing when it released, but late game coins were not useful for anything, basically. And so it's like then in Age of Artisans, you gave people a way to spend coins to get points, basically with the adornments, I think it is.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And so you kind of like balance patch something while giving people more stuff. And then I think another thing that makes really good expansions for me personally is when it just integrates really well into the game. So I'm not as much a fan of like the new stuff, like new stuff where it like adds on like a whole bunch more complexity or a whole bunch more learning to like getting the game to the table. But the ones where it like integrates really nicely but makes the game better. So Age of Artisans is a good example there as well, where it's like you just have these cards that slot in above the buildings or below your apprentices, and they feel like they're an integral part of the game. But for some other people, Works of Wonders is going to be their expansion because it added more depth to the game, right? And some people want a lot, like they're like, oh, Architects is too light, I want a heavier game. And it's suddenly with the expansion, or like I hear so many people talk about Raiders, they're like, Raiders with both expansions is amazing, and they'll poo-poo Raiders without the expansions, which I think is a great game because you can actually get it to the table and teach people. But these people are like, heavy gamers, and they're like, oh, you need both expansions. So for people who like a heavy game, sometimes you can transform a game that is very accessible into a game that also those people will like by adding new stuff and expansions. So I think like there's room for all of these things, but I think it is really case by case.
You touched on something there about adding more rules. Sometimes it's really detrimental to the game, where the fun or the attraction of the game is its elegance and its simplicity, and then you add more stuff. It's like, nah, we've ruined it. Like looking at you, King Domino with Queen Domino and stuff. So like sometimes I just want a game to stay pure, and it's usually a lighter game in that case, like a smaller tile laying game or something. I don't want lots of expansion content. The other two that we do have now in the hobby, there's the standalone expansion, which I'm not a fan of, where it's basically here's the game again with more stuff. I just think that's just a nasty kind of publishing trick, to be honest. The other one would be like a campaign kind of expansion, which I do quite like. So the first expansion for Arnak I really liked because it added more stuff. It gave you more cards that you're used to seeing. It gave you leaders, which wasn't a concept in the original. So this whole new rule set of like playing an asymmetric leader. Well, am I getting it wrong? Maybe it was the second one added the campaign. I think the first one added those two things. The second one added the campaign. So the second one gave you, again, more cards and 2 new leaders, but also a 1 to 2 player kind of solo co-op campaign that you can play through, which is really cool because it's going to make you play it. And I think the main goal of an expansion is to breathe new life into the base game, so that game that's been on your shelf for a year unplayed, you're going to dust off and then get back into it again. The downside to expansions, when you want to play it, but then everyone at the table hasn't played the game before.
Yeah.
And you're like, I guess I'll teach you the base game now and we'll learn the expansion next time. And then there's never next time.
There's never next time, yeah.
Like expansions do require, I guess, a regular group or an experienced group, or you just go, you know what, throw it all in. So there's upsides, downsides. Yeah, I kind of like the idea of not doing expansions, just so that there's this kind of purity to the game and you design it as it's intended. But, I've done expansions and they are fun to design and they are a great way of just honoring fans because we play a lot. And I know that, like, say, if you're following, the Instagrammers or the YouTubers of board gaming, they play a lot of games. They always play the new hotness and all that kind of stuff. Most people aren't doing that, and most people probably shouldn't do that. So I like this idea of just releasing something fresh that really honors, like, here's the game, here's some new stuff you can add to it.
I like that, those words you just used, like honoring fans. I think when you do an expansion, you're putting out a message to say, hey, we actually still believe in this game. I know this is old for us. We've released like 10 games since that or whatever, but we still believe in this. We still want to service this game, and we hope you still enjoy this game. Here, get it out, bring it to the table. It still holds up, and I think that's a really nice message to send. Getting to work on these old games and actually, no, they're still good.
So speaking of amazing covers from Shem Phillips, if anyone's seen the cover for Headlands with all those seals, like it just looks so amazing. Why did you decide to expand Skara Brae? What kind of led you to that?
Well, funnily enough, it was all about the seals. I really wanted a box cover. No, I didn't. That wasn't it. No. So this actually came from playing on Board Game Arena. So we've been playing it a lot, before it was even into the public alpha, really thrashing the game. And I was really enjoying playing it again because, you can play it so quickly on BGA. And after how many plays I had, dozens, I was like, I kind of want more variety. I want to play some new powers. And I started thinking up some ideas. And it's at that point that I've always had this kind of idea of maybe doing a little expansion box for the entire series, like a promo pack, kind of booster pack. What if there was, when the 10th game comes out, there's something for every game. And so I immediately started designing just 2 player powers, 2 special tiles for Skara Brae. And I tested those. They were working, kind of well. And then, of course, I got the bug. And I was like, well, maybe I could design a couple more. Like, what if I did 2 more? And then at that point, I'm like, well, maybe it's time to expand the game. Maybe there's more I could do here. And that's just when I basically jumped in and started working on this. As like, let's just scrap the whole idea of doing a promo booster pack. Let's do a full expansion for Skara Brae. Because, we needed more resources in the game. That's a very key part. We need more. There's not enough. So let's try and bring in some more.
Yeah, so on that, there are a few new resources added to the game. Was there not enough? Are you trying to break the world record for the most unique physical resources in a board game?
I don't know what the record is. Surely we're close. I mean, maybe not. Maybe there's one game that's got like hundreds of different resources. But no, I mean, that's And when you think of expansions, like you kind of have systems in place, adding in new varieties of those things into systems is kind of an obvious move. So the game uses resources. What if there was another resource? That's kind of an obvious thing. Like if we're talking about Scythia already with the Fields of Fame expansion for Raiders of the North Sea, I added in Jarls because they were just the token itself. Just you throw it in the plunder bag. It's just like any other plunder. And now it works in the same system. So
And more Vikings. Who doesn't want more Vikings, right?
yeah, so adding in a new resource or two made a lot of sense. It's kind of the obvious move. But it's also a really good opportunity to bring theme into the game because everyone loves the little critters and stuff and all the resources in the game. So having a new piece kind of gives the game some identity. So we bring in seals and we bring in oil as the two new wooden resources. And then there's two new action tiles that every player gets, which sit to the left of the furnish and the shore gather action. And they just seamlessly plug in. Sam's done amazing work on the artwork for those. There's now an extra gather action, which is a way of getting seals, but also if you upgrade it, I think you can get scale knives as well and oil. There's no cards that tuck below this, so it's not like the other 4 gather actions that have the villagers going below, but it is an extra gather action itself. So if you're doing 10 land, you could gather from that one as well, and you can place workers there to get stuff. And above that, there's a new action called Produce, which it works a little bit like the Hearth with the cooking. It has a limit of how much you can produce, and then it shows you what you can use those production points for. And it also comes with a baked in at the end of the round, you get to produce. So there's already this kind of like thing, like when you flip over cook in the base game, you get to do a free cook at the end, you now get this free produce action. But you kind of need to have more than just the base production to do anything with it, because 1 production point can make an oil. If I'm remembering my rules to the game, might be 2, I can't remember. I think it's 1. Or 1 can let you spend the oil to get a food. So having just 1 is not that useful. But there's lots of ways in the game to get more production, just like there are to increase your cooking limit in the base game. So every player gets these 2, and you're managing oil to clear midden, but also to produce food. And it can be used like any other resource. So I think, Sam, you had a game where you had so much oil, you just like, I just trade it away. I just keep trading it and getting rid of it. So there's that kind of thing. And then there's also 7 new action tiles, so special action tiles, which is really the meat and the fun of like more variety, more player powers and that kind of thing going on as well. On top of that, there's also more settlers, which interact with seals and oil. And there's a new whale carcass card that gets added, which is kind of like the utensils cards. They're kind of like, there's only 4 of them. They're quite strong and they do something different.
So Skara Brae is a game where players have a set number of actions over the course of the game. So how do you add new systems to a game like this without kind of diluting what's already there?
Yeah, that is a challenge. The more actions you give, the less you're going to take the other actions if you're interacting with the new stuff. That's a real big challenge in balancing this kind of expansion, where you need to make sure that if you interact with the expansion, you can win. But also if you don't interact with it, you can still win as well. So getting that balance right is quite hard, especially when you've got these asymmetric sort of special action tiles, because some will benefit more from the expansion than others. And so getting that balance right was quite a challenge. And I'm not saying that I've got it perfectly right either. There's still some little bit of testing going on here and there and stuff. So it's very interesting. And every player is different. That's the real challenge. So I was doing a lot of balancing to make sure that these new tiles were performing how I expected the other ones to perform. So usually in the solo mode, you can score like 45 to 55. BGA has proved that you can get quite high if you're really, really good at the game. But I was making these tiles perform at a similar area. Like, there's one called Pitch Tents, for example. Pitch Tents was scoring, 45, 55-ish most plays. And Sam, you brought up a comment about, well, surely the expansion is adding some power creep to the game, because you're passively getting to do this production action at the end of each round. So they're already giving players a little bit more. So surely you should be scoring higher. And I was like, yeah, that's actually a really good point. So I jumped in, I played with Spin Wool with the expansion and scored like 65 points. I was like, okay, all right.
We got some power creep here, guys.
I've never scored over like probably 58 or so with Spin Wool, so that's probably something's going on here. So I had to jump back in and rebalance all of those expansion tiles to try and perform higher. But yeah, you're saying about the action costs. So the bottom action, which is the gather action, you could never use it the whole game. That's fine. It's basically an alternative to the other ones. So, you go to the fields, you can get barley, or you can turn barley into getting cows. This one, you can go there and get scale knives or seals, but they're doing similar things. They're providing you with food and other things. So they're not really another action you have to take. It's just an alternative action. And then the production action, like I was saying, it's an action you can take to go there to produce, but you get that free produce at the end of the round anyway. So it's not an action I expect players to use a lot. So certain play styles, you will go there a fair bit and you will abuse your really strong production limit that you've created. But most games, you may never go there. You might go there once, maybe, because it's just a more beneficial action. Because if you know you can turn oil into food at the end of the round, and you've got one extra worker that's not really doing anything. In the base game, you might go, oh, I'll just get a stone. I'll probably use it at some point. But now you've got this option, oh, I'll go get an oil, and that's a food at the end of the round. So it's kind of a slightly better lame action, I guess, if you've got one worker you can't use. But it wasn't designed with the intention that players will be going here a lot. So that's kind of how I covered that question, I guess.
We sort of encountered this whole idea in, especially working on Body of Books, where it was a new stuff type of expansion. We wanted to add a new concept, not just a more stuff type of expansion, because we couldn't really do a more stuff expansion. We'd already come up with so many scrolls, so many translators, it just didn't really work. So we wanted to add a new concept, but these 4 main actions were kind of sacred. We didn't want to mess with the loop of the game, which is recruit, deliver, translate. And I guess research is there, it's kind of on the side, but we couldn't really afford for players to add an extra action into that loop and for everything to still run so smoothly, because all the actions sort of rely on each other. There's this kind of ecosystem in the game. So we had real trouble with scholars trying to figure out how to add new stuff without kind of adding a new action, a new pathway for people to take that was going to take away from all the other stuff. And so that's where we sort of ended up tying page cards into your resting action. So it's just another thing you could do when you rest. And you could also get into it via translating, but even when you do that, you're still placing gold on the translators, still part of that normal loop. So some games really do need you to not mess with the core action structure or add one more action to the list of actions. That can be really detrimental to the game's flow. And so it's about coming up with new ways to bring new ideas in, not just another thing in the list.
We had that same challenge with Paladins. Paladins, like Scholars, is a very enclosed system. It's hard to add things in and everything kind of balances on itself. The way we achieved it with that one was where one action was kind of riffing on the king's favor. It's more about these cards out in the public space and they work in a very similar way. But that was adding an extra action that players could or couldn't or choose not to take. So it was diluting the actions. But the way we kind of addressed that was with the other action, negotiate. So that action in itself actually lets you do the other actions. So one half of it does at least. So there was the new action lets you do the other old actions. So it kind of helped cover that a little bit. Because if you've got 6 really core tight scoring actions, you add in 2 more, that's just it's spreading it too wide. So you need to try and make it come back in and belong to the game more.
Yeah, City of Crowns is a great example of power creep, and you also mentioned there was some power creep when designing Skara Brae Headlands. Is this a feature or a bug?
I'd say it's a feature, yeah. From a design point of view, it's something to be aware of, for sure. And I think most expansions are probably going to add power creep, because you want to feel stronger and feel like you're doing cooler things than you were in the base game. So I think it's a good feature to have, that you should be able to score higher now with the expansion. Even if a player they struggle to get 45 in the solo game, suddenly they're scoring 49, 50-ish, and they're like, it's just this thing of I think I'm playing pretty well, but the honesty is that the game is lifting them up a bit. But that's fine, it's good. And you should now expect to score higher and hopefully hit 65 if you can. We'll see.
Yeah. If you're an amazing, amazing, amazing game designer who is able to perfectly balance things, which I don't think we have the level of detail with numbers in board games because we're working with small numbers to be able to do this, then maybe your expansion is exactly on par with everything else that has come about. But I think it's really likely that it's either better or worse. It's really hard to hit things being exactly on par with your balance, right? And so if your expansion is ever so slightly worse, it's just not a compelling prospect for the player. It's not a good value proposition to lean into this thing. So they buy this box and they get all these new cards and stuff like that. And if it's not worthwhile for them to get them, they kind of feel like that's a waste. Why did I get this thing? It's not interesting, right? So you want the new thing to be exciting for players. I think if you're going to lean towards it being a little bit worse or a little bit better, assuming you can't make them exactly the same value as other things, then it has to be a little bit better to make it exciting. But I think what you've done nicely in Headlands is that you've kind of raised everything as well. If you don't lean into the expansion stuff, the base game stuff has gotten a little bit better as well because of your oil system and that sort of thing. And the settler cards, the new settler cards drafting, like they're available for all players, and you don't have to lean into the other expansion stuff, but you can still benefit from them. So I think you've done a really good job with that.
Yeah, I think it's almost leaning into a cursed problem of like, if you want it to be balanced like it was with the base game, then like, what's the new stuff doing? What's the point of the new stuff? Will people even want to interact with that?
Exactly.
If they can just do it as well. So yeah, I think it's tricky because you want the new stuff to be fun for people to lead into it. Yeah, I don't know if you can. Maybe you can make a good expansion that is like the complete same level as the base game, but I'm not sure that you can.
Zach, part of your job is to promote games, but it's like an expansion. You want the stuff in the expansion to promote itself within the context of playing the game.
Yeah.
Like, oh, look at this thing. This is cool. I want this thing. You know, it's like self-promotion within the game, not like outside of the game to buy the thing, but like, here's this shiny thing that I'm really drawn to. At the same time, you don't want that to cannibalize everything else that was already in the game, so that becomes obsolete.
Yeah.
So it's a really fine line that you walk. So Shem, there are more unique action tiles. You mentioned the number 7. That's a lot. How do you do it? How do you come up with new player powers that have unique play patterns? Do you ever feel like you've just run out of design space? There's nothing more to do?
I mean, I thought I had with the base game, like, for sure. I had 8.
Right.
And then I designed 2 more for promos for the Kickstarter. And then I was like, that's definitely done. There's nothing more to explore there. I mean, we've all had this experience doing expansions where you think you're done. And then I mean, Spirited's a good example. Like 20, can't have more than 20. And then, oh, actually, I did 10 more. And you just keep designing. There's always more to discover. You run the risk of like stuff becoming samey.
Right.
And not having its own personality. I think I got to 8 for the expansion. And there was 1 or 2 that just weren't quite singing. They were like, they're fine. They kind of work, but they weren't like amazing and that compelling. And then I realized that one that I really liked, which is Pitch Tents, it adds in these little tokens that you place into your storage area. They're going to make you produce more midden, but they give you powers. And on the punch boards, just from a production point of view, I needed that space for those. And so it actually made sense because I can fit, 8 tiles to a punch board. So there's the 8 that come for every player, the 2 new ones.
Right.
2 of each. And then there's like, well, I've got room for 7 more and then these little tent tokens. So 7 was the number mostly because like, why would I add 1 more punch board just for 4 little tokens? So that's kind of where I landed on the number. But also like, you've got 8 in the base game. 7's quite a lot to add. Like usually you're adding like half or maybe a third of the original content. So but I really wanted it to be like, this is going to really amp up the replayability of the game quite a lot. Like you've got the 2 from the Kickstarter, you've got 17 different action tiles. But that's a lot to play through. So, but yeah, the early stages of this, like I said, I had these 2 that were like kind of planned to be a little promo expansion. I'm going to probably forget what they were at this point. One of them still exists, and it allows you to essentially create midden to then take 2 actions straight away, and any 2 actions. So you're creating all this mess on your board, but then you've got 2 bonus actions to take, which could be the same action or 2 different actions. So it's very strong, but you have to then manage this extra mess you're making. I can't quite remember what the other one was and if it still exists. I'm pretty sure from memory there wasn't any other components tied to it because I was thinking they were just 2 boards, that's it. One of the earlier ones I got onto was Raise Young, it's called. Now this brings in 12 little infant cards that are just yours. Your own little deck of cards, you shuffle them, they go next to your little tile. And when you do this action, you flip the top infant card. It's sort of double-sided in a way where you can rotate it 180. And it's basically a settler. It just has an icon for, say, the shore on one side, and then it might have thickets on the other side or the hills on the other side. And you rotate which way you want for it to be. So there's 12 of these cards. So I think it's like half of them will have, each of the 4 environments on them. And when you place it, you get to take one of the, as if you'd placed a worker essentially, on that same gather action that it's sitting below. So you're going to buff your engine for that column. You're going to potentially score more points from your furnish if you can feed all these babies, but you also get a benefit from the tile above it. And if you've upgraded Raise Young, then you get that benefit twice. So you get to take 2 worker placement actions straight away on that environment. I talked about the Pitch Tents, which adds in these extra tiles. They're going to give you permanent, while they're in your rotation, in your storage area, permanent environment icons. So you are stronger when you're placing down settlers. But they're also going to do things like increase your hearth limit, make you produce less midden. They're going to give you an extra stone ball. So if you start taking the stone ball cards, then you get more scale knives, that kind of thing. Another unique one was one that adds in 12 vessel cards. It's all about oil. So you shuffle up this deck of vessel cards, and when you take this action, you draw one, or if you flipped it, you draw two, and you choose one of these cards which sit alongside your roofs and stuff. And they're going to either give you oil based on how many of these cards you've already played down, or they're going to give you the icon that you use for later, or they're going to give you like an extra stone wall, or they're going to give you some seals or other things like that. So they're kind of a little bit like the spin wall, but they're doing something more different and focused on oil. There's a bunch of other ones which don't add extra components. There's like Keep Watch, which lets you get more access to different villager cards. You can kind of stash them and then use them later. There's a one that's all about cooking sheep and producing sheep, and you can kind of do a bit of Louis Reisenberg sheep farming and that kind of thing. So there's lots of little ones like that going on. Some of the ideas I had were bringing in more components. I had one that had this like token that sat to the right of your slider, and it would get pushed out and you try and pull it back for a benefit, but it just wasn't working. Like I tried some different things like that, different ideas that bring in new components, but they ultimately just weren't that fun. They just didn't really work how I wanted to work. So kind of, you'd had that kind of number of 7 or 8 from the start that I wanted to do, and then you add them in and you take away the worst ones, bring in new ones, and just whatever's the best 7 at the end was what stuck basically.
I love that you went with the prime number. You often will like the number 12, 16, like you often go for these really nice kind of squarish numbers, but you went with 7. Good on you.
Had to.
Nice and prime.
Another thing that I haven't touched on is actually about the draft cards. So one kind of, I wouldn't say complaint, but at least a observation from players is how playing solo can be quite different from multiplayer. Because in solo, it's like Shipwright's Redux. You just draw cards. You draw 4 cards, keep 1, draw 3 cards, keep 1, draw 2 cards, keep 1. You don't get that feeling of seeing the cards coming down the line. You don't get to pick your kind of turn order as you go, hoping to get that one card. The intention was always like to have it feel different. And it was a different feeling. And solo was far more like you don't have to manage so much space on the table. You just sit in there with your draw cards and choose one. There is obviously more luck to that. So players who really didn't enjoy that would get bothered by it. So I started thinking through it. Is there a solution to offer a different drafting mechanism for solo? And there is. So I've added in these little, I think it's 8 cards, which essentially work like dummy players. So anytime there's a dummy player on the little board for the turn order tile, you essentially simulate like a 3-player game for solo. Anytime it's a dummy player's turn, you flip a card. It's going to either pass and just go to the top of the stack, or it's going to take a very specific card from the offer and then remove it. So there is some deduction that happens. You start to realize, they've already passed twice, or they've already taken from the left twice, or whatever it is. And that you only shuffle that every round. So it's quite simple. And you can even add that dummy into a 2-player game if you want a bit more, some more decisions or choices or whatever, more cards on the table. So that will hopefully satisfy players who didn't quite enjoy the original solo system. Makes it more in line with the multiplayer.
So what are you most excited for players to discover with this expansion, Shem?
I hope that they just enjoy playing the game again, really. I mean, I'm guessing that when most people got the game from Kickstarter, they probably thrashed it, I'd say. As most of us do, we get a new game, especially a soloable game with variety, with a special action tile. So I'm guessing that most players, if they like the game, they probably play through every special action tile. Like I did this with like Arnak and stuff, where I played the whole thing and I'm done. And it goes on the shelf and then I won't touch it for a while. Maybe I'll bust it out multiplayer and show some people. But for a very kind of solo focused game, I'll often just play through like every version of the game, and then I might come back and play some again or whatever, try and beat some high scores. But then you're kind of done. Like you finish the game. It might come out if you're the kind of player who enjoys like, I'll play this game once a month in my rotation or whatever. That's cool. I think a lot of players will have just thrashed it and it's now sitting there. So hopefully this allows them to jump back into Skara Brae and then enjoy the game again, discover new things. Maybe they go back and try the other action tiles with the expansion. But there's going to be a lot of content for anyone who wants to just jump back in and get some more plays.
Awesome.
So, Shem, will we see any more ancient expansions in the future?
I don't know. Nothing planned. I do know that Bobby wants to do a little campaign expansion for the Anarchy. I think he's already got some ideas for it and he's been working on it. So
another campaign.
Yes, that would probably be quite a small expansion. Probably not the box that we'd usually use, say, for Headlands or for like Age of Artisans, that kind of thing. More likely a Tome Saga type box size, but that's still up in the air. That could be a next year thing. I'm not too sure currently. But yeah, a lot of the games like more recently, so Ezra Nehemiah, even like The Great Sea and Sifnos, those boxes are full. Like there's so much in those boxes. And they're also still quite fresh to us.
Yeah.
So, I mean, like Scythia is, what do you say? Is 6 years old now?
6 years old, yeah.
So going back feels quite nice. And you come with very fresh eyes. Skara Brae's not quite as old, but it's still a really fun space for me to design. And I still really enjoy the game a lot. It's my happy place as a player in terms of style of games. So I can play in that sandpit forever. Whereas like going back to say Ezra Nehemiah, it's like, that's a big beast. Do I have the capacity to design something fresh? And the big problem is like, how's it going to fit in that box? So
and not taking away from the other actions as previously addressed.
yeah.
And it sort of feels like with Assyria, we've already sort of designed an expansion, and that
Yes.
the game itself felt like we were designing an expansion. Yes, we were tweaking and refreshing the base game, but it sort of was an expansion sort of mindset for design, right, when working on that one?
Yeah. So I mean, I had the same thing, I guess, with Scythia versus North Sea, but that was a little bit different. Yeah, like Assyria is very much a lot more divorced of Scythia than North Sea. Like it's a very different game from the base game of Assyria.
Right.
A lot of things have changed when you added. So you're right. It does feel kind of like an expansion in a way. So
Like maybe the civilizations are an expansion, that kind of
yeah,
thing.
yeah. We could definitely add more, I think. But a lot of it's about demand, eh? And like,
Yeah.
especially with, say, solo games like this, like Skara Brae, there's a lot more demand, I think. And it's going to do well because you can just sell it so easily, and not sell it in financially, sell it like as a viable thing. Like this gives you more variety, more special powers.
Yeah.
And people are like, yes, please, I'll have some of that, please. Like it's just people want it. Whereas a game like Assyria, we would be doing new systems, I think, for sure. And how do we sell that? Like how do we go, you loved Assyria, then add all this new stuff you don't know about? Like it's hard to really like convey what it's adding. Whereas Skara Brae,
And one of the attractions of Assyria is like the fact that it's like a classic hero style and quite elegant,
Yes.
right?
yeah, so and then you run the risk of bloating it, which is always the problem. Like you don't want to bloat a game. So yeah. No, I don't know. I'm trying to think of the rest of the catalogue. I think it's all new stuff since then. So I don't think so. I mean, they said no originally, and now we're doing 2. So maybe 3. So it's open, but I don't think we're going to change the model.
Yeah.
It's not going to be like, here's a new game, expect an expansion next year. That's not going to be a thing.
Yeah, very nice.
It's more like, let's see in 6 years the games that have
Yeah.
come out with one of the merits of expansion. Or who
Yep.
knows?
Looking forward to it. It'll be great.
We hope you've enjoyed our discussion about Omens and Headlands. We'd love to hear from you. Jump on the Garphill Games Discord and let us know on the podcast channel what you'd like to see in an expansion. More stuff, new stuff, balance patch, or something else. Thanks for listening to this episode. If you're listening to this soon after it's come out, we'd love it if you could check out the campaign for Omens and Headlands, live on Kickstarter from the 18th of August. To check out the campaign, we've got some short links, garphill.com/omens or garphill.com/headlands will take you right to the campaign page. The campaign's a very simple one. You can find on the campaign page some playthrough videos, you can find the rule books. We're just offering the 2 expansions. You can't add on the base games, you can't add on any other Ancient Anthology games, but if you'd like to pick up the base games, if you'd like to pick up promos, if you'd like to pick up some other Ancient Anthology games, we are offering a 20% discount on all Ancient Anthology products at garphill.com during the campaign. You can find that promo code on the Kickstarter page, so make sure to use that, pick up what you need. Remember that we do offer free shipping when you spend $150 or more for all the products excluding promos, because all our products excluding promos are in different warehouses around the world, whereas our promos get sent out from New Zealand, which is why they have a separate shipping charge.
Thanks for listening to the Lens and Veil podcast. This podcast is brought to you by Garphill Games. You can follow Garphill Games on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Blue Sky, X, and YouTube by subscribing to our newsletter at garphill.com or by joining the Garphill Discord server.
So Skara Brae's a game. Sorry.
It is. You're right.